Morning. That first speech was really something. I feel very nervous now to speak after that. I wish I could stay and listen to more of it, but I guess it's my turn now. So I'm happy to be here and to have an opportunity to speak about civic engagement. And before we go into civic engagement, I want to say that I will not have the answers, but I will have a lot of questions. No one can feel at ease when talking about civil society, and no one can speak with the voice of civil society. However, we can try to talk about what it means, what it represents to us, and what we can make it to be better, and better with the ultimate goal of having an overall better society. So, when I ask you what is civil society, probably the first thing many of us think of is either nonprofit, non-governmental organizations, right? You can nod if that's what you thought. But there are other things we often neglect. We often forget that non-formal groups like Natočak or Retweet a Meal are also part of civil society. That movements like Stop Police Brutality or O2 Coalition for Clean Air are also part of civil society. Many individuals, like all of us, make civil society. But it's not just that. It's media, it's universities, it's unions. Civil society is a very complex, broad spectrum of things that constitute it. And they all have a different way of working into it. Some work through direct actions, through community engagement, others through research, third through policy advocacy. But it doesn't matter what the form is, what the objective is, what the group behind it is, as long as it's supposed to fit into the segment of a better society and improve communities, it is part of civil society. And we often find ourselves where we've done something. So I'm going to ask you to think of the first time you volunteered for something. Or maybe the last time you went and supported some cause or initiative that you strongly believe in. Or maybe the last thing that has been bothering you for like the last few days. I don't know, maybe it's a pothole on the street, maybe it's some poor implementation of a particular policy, maybe it's something you just want to change and has been on your mind. And often, the first barrier for doing something about it are we ourselves. We tend to say, I don't have the time. I don't have anyone to do it with. I'm not sure how. But I think that Nina from Gruper also wasn't sure how she was going to make e-commerce work in Macedonia. I'm sure Retweet a Meal had a situation where they didn't have any place or anything to cook with, but they figured it out nonetheless. Or maybe we have different barriers in front of us. The guys that save stray puppies and stray cats from the streets don't really do it as part of their job. They spend their free time to do it. And I want to talk a little bit about the people that inspire and can make us overcome some of these barriers that tell us don't, can't, won't. One of the people is this guy. If you haven't met him, he's from Tetavok, he's called Damir Naziri, and he's an activist in many ways, but I want to talk about his Facebook activism, because many of us say, if you write on Facebook, that's nothing. Well, he proves us a little wrong. He was unhappy with a lot of things happening in the city, and he decided to vent, like many of us do. So he would post on Facebook that this street is too crowded, or there's too much trash over there, or the littering is out of control, and he would always tag his mayor. So at some point, she, or her PR team, we don't know, started responding. They started paying attention to this one very stubborn guy that spent like 30 seconds a day to tell the municipality what he wished was better. And regardless of the fact that he was alone or he did something that many of us would say, that won't amount to anything, it did. Now this next person, I think all of you know. Alexander Matov-Skitsako is a true inspiration. He is a poet, a dancer. He has spoken at the United Nations. He is a radio show host. He is the winner of the Youth Civic Engagement Award. He's many things, but most of all, an inspirational activist for Down syndrome. And if it weren't for him, many people in this country would have no idea what Down syndrome is and what it means. And again, he has taken the freedom and the opportunity to stand there in the spotlight alone and bravely talk about it. And another girl who some people would say they don't have the time, but she figured it out. Alexandra Davidkovska lives in Kumanovo. She worked as a shoe designer in a shoe company. But when the refugee crisis started happening, and she saw all of these people going through her city looking for shelter, fleeing for their lives, She felt that she has to do something about it. So she did. She left her job and she started going to the mosque where people would gather to receive help. And then she started going to the border and helping people. So these three guys, these three individuals, they spent a little bit of stubbornness. They committed with giving up on a little bit of things. They stood there and risked everything to fight for their causes. And we've learned so much from them. Some groups that also inspired. These are our members in Tetovo, where they were really upset with this local part that was completely abandoned and nothing was happening. And they asked the municipality, please fix it. They didn't. So they went in and did it themselves. You don't always have to wait for someone else to solve the things. What they did was, the first time they went, they cleaned up the entire park. The second time, they repainted all of the rust out of it. The third time, they set up benches. By the fourth time, they were organizing events, and the municipality was right there with them helping, at this point having understood what this park means to these kids. Well, we all know these guys. They made a lot of things happen, but one thing they made work was prove that horizontal organizing can sometimes work, and many of us see them as a protest movement, but they are so much more. They are people that have participated in legislation and writing a new law on higher education. There are people that have showed that it's important to organize and prove that you stand behind the words. They have spent almost more than a month sleeping and working and organizing activities at the public universities in Skopje, showing what a real university should look like and what we should have in it. And they'd achieved a lot. They, of course, prevented poor legislation reform. From next year, we should have new students organizing. That is partly to their credit. But most importantly, I think they invigorated everyone in this country and showed what the power of democratic self-organizing really means. I'm somewhere in this picture, by the way. This is another initiative called Youth Republic. It happened 5 or 6 years ago when many of us said, Macedonia is the only country that doesn't have an umbrella youth representative organization, which can help us as young people to speak with one voice. So we said we want to establish it, but we didn't just establish it. We said we were going to debate for like a month across the entire country and ask everyone what kind of organization they want. So it was this insane endeavor. I've almost 20 debates in a little under a month in all across Macedonia. And they worked, they helped. Because for instance, one of the things, when we started the debates, many of the activists thought that political party youth wings don't belong in organizations like this. By the end of it, they had convinced us to be strong advocates that youth political parties must be, youth wings of political parties must be part of youth organizing as important actors in the society. So consultations appear to also be a relevant way to take participation. And a little bit about myself. I'm not going to talk about other people all of the time, I guess. This is the community I come from. Youth Educational Forum is an organization that has been around for a little over 18 years now. So technically we could have the right to vote at this point. We have been always youth-led and always true to our core values in this society, always consistent, always very stubborn, and always kind of there. And I'm so happy to be part of this family. This is a youth community that creates a space for debate, that promotes freedom of expression, that supports youth activism, and tries to do that with everyone else joining them. The way I joined YEF is when I was 14, I enrolled in a debate club and started debating. And then I remember that when I was, I think, 17 when I won my first debating championship. But I know for a fact that I was 17 and a half when I did my first civic engagement, at least the one that I feel true. We were about to graduate. There was this reform that we knew that maybe or maybe not is going to happen. We didn't know. And we said to our debate trainers, this is bothering us. And they said, why don't you do something about it? Fair point. So we did. We decided to organize an event and bring the institutions and the students together to debate what kind of graduation exam we want. Our event was a disaster. No one from the institutions came. We had empty seats, and we had an audience packed with, I think, 60, 70 high school students and media. And we did the event nonetheless. And then we were on air, on all of the news for 2 days. And they kept saying, high school students want to speak their minds, the institutions aren't there. So it kind of worked. And 2 days later, the ministry responded and said, all right, this is the answer regarding your questions. So that one we won. There's plenty we haven't won, but you don't give up. And there's plenty we've managed to succeed in, so we have to keep pushing, and as long as we know why we're doing it, it matters. And one thing I learned from this organization is debating, and the importance of hearing other people's opinions as equally valid as your own. The arguments will make the difference, of course, but you need to understand and know that everyone's opinion should be expressed. And here comes this quote that I can't live without at this point is, I've never learned something from someone who has agreed with me. So we need to challenge ourselves and get out of our comfort zones and talk and think about these things. And getting out of comfort zones. I want to ask all of you to think deeply about these statements that I'm going to give. They might not be true, but let's talk about what kind of civil society we need and want for our country. A civil society that can safeguard the rights of others. Civil society does not need to exist just to exist. It serves several purposes. I'm going to highlight a few. We need a civil society that is capable of protecting everyone's rights, even the ones without a voice. A civil society that can show solidarity and set a good example of what respecting fundamental rights and civil rights and liberties as well means. A civil society that can help move the country forward. So we might not be elected representatives, and many will argue you don't have the right, but we do. We're citizens that have the right to self-organize and freely speak their mind. And we also have a responsibility, whether we see it or not, to help push this society forward. So with the problems we see are not fixed, we also share a responsibility to make sure they are fixed. So as civil society, we should be critical and present, but we should also be progressive and provide solutions and ideas and innovation and set new things. A civil society that can hold institutions accountable. Many will say, I don't deal with politics. Well, politics and policies are also part of being a citizen and our right to participate in. And we are there to make sure that institutions stay faithful to their words and promises, that they fill their promises, and that our public officials work transparently. We have judiciary, we have parliament, we have a government, we have local authorities, that we as citizens are the ones that can help them be better and make sure they conduct what they say and work transparently. And if we notice something wrong, it is our duty to react and find ways to improve it. We need a civil society that can help promote civic participation. It's not about 5 or 10 or 50 or 500 people that stand strongly and speak. It's about everyone having the right to speak. And a civil society needs to help promote participation. When asked to talk about youth organizations, it's not enough for 1 or 2 or 3 to go there. We need to make sure we invite all of young people to have a say and a role in this. We don't speak on behalf of ourselves, we speak on behalf of society, and we should have that in the back of our minds and fight to make sure that every person that is concerned by the things that are in discussion at least has the right to know about them and the information about how they can contribute and participate in it. So we have this responsibility to make sure we involve as many people as we can. And lastly, a civil society that can empower and inspire. We have this sort of duty, I think, to give what we know to others, to share what we know, to not monopolize information but pass it along to as many people as we can, to invigorate, to spark, and to help others, to stand behind them. If someone else has a good idea, it doesn't matter that they have it. What matters is that we give them support for that. So finally, there's so many inspirational examples, and I could only put so few. But I want to ask you to find a few more. Look to your left, look to your right. These probably are people sitting right next to you that have all so much to say and do. So talk to them when we have a break, not now, but talk to them. See what they have to share. See what they have to tell. Let's see what their story is. And finally, I asked you a few minutes ago, I hope it was a few minutes ago, to think about that one thing that has been bothering you this last few days or this last week. You know, the thing you wanted to fix. Maybe your building isn't recycling. Well, none are, but you know, that's also a problem. Maybe this particular politician is pushing an agenda that you're not sure is the right one. Maybe you just want to solve a local park thing. And, you know, what's preventing you? Think about what you can do about it. And that's the last question I want to leave you with. Think about that one thing that was bothering you and ask yourselves, how do I fix this? Thank you.